Well, hello. It's Truth and Double Daring with Dottie and Diane. Join us for some fun and fascinating conversation.
Welcome. I am so excited today to bring a woman I met through a TED Talk that she gave, a TEDx talk that she gave in Newport, Rhode Island. That was absolutely moving to me. It followed a woman after my own heart, if you will, who was willing to live her truth simply because it showed up. Her talk was titled Service Over Self, Leaving a Sustainable Legacy. Most of the talk we get around legacy is around financial, legacy or a spiritual legacy. And this was so powerful. The way she is described and putting it out there, who is Wendy Taylor? And of course, she's going to fill in the blanks throughout this podcast. But just to give you a sense of her as we start, it says here, baby birds need to be hand-fed every 15 minutes from sunup to sundown, and it's hardly a job for a law firm. Wendy taught her paralegal and her secretary to feed the rescue birds she brought to work while she took depositions all day. Now, just think about this, a law office, and here is Wendy doing the law while she's tending to these babies all around her, or having her associates tend to these babies. My colleagues and my partner thought I was crazy, and looking back, I was, says Wendy. I was in the process of discovering my true passion. 15 years ago, Wendy lost her house and 9 of her pets in a fire. In the aftermath, she needed to do something to make her world right again, because you can imagine how traumatic that would be. Wendy began rehabilitating injured wildlife as a way to regain a sense of purpose and to honor the lives of her lost four-legged friends. Soon after, she gave up a 20-year law practice to open a nonprofit animal sanctuary. Today, Wendy's nonprofit, West Place Animal Sanctuary, has grown into an 8-acre farm that rehabilitates injured wildlife and farm animals rescued from cruelty cases. Just my heart breaks with that. Becoming a lawyer and defending clients was a good goal, but becoming a defender of those who can't speak for themselves was the right goal. And I think that's a huge thing to look at. One was the good goal, but one was the right goal for Wendy. She believes that one of the ways to work through personal tragedy is by volunteering. West Place provides a home not only for rescued animals, but also for a host of volunteers finding fulfillment in service. Our volunteers needed our rescues as much as our rescues needed our volunteers, says Wendy. And this just goes on. I mean, there's so much more to say to her. I want you to hear it from her personally. What it finishes up is when she says, what you've done in this world is gone when you're gone, but what you do for others is going to remain as a part of your legacy. Now that is a true legacy, because what it ends up doing is leaving the essence of who you are to transform the world in the way it needs to be transformed. This is what made me so inspired and say, I want to bring her to those who follow us and those that I know. So here we are with Wendy.
Welcome, Wendy. It's Diane over here.
Thank you both for having me on. I really appreciate it. And thank you, Dottie, for reading that bio, which I forgot was prepared on my behalf a little while back. And your comments to that bio, I don't think I really could have said it much better myself. You're doing my interview for me.
My part's over. No, it's all yours.
All right. So Dottie, do you want to have, I'll ask the first question.
You go right ahead, darling.
Because I love to talk. So Wendy, welcome. So glad to have you here. We chatted a little bit before we got on the call and got to know you a little bit. And I too am excited to hear your story and see how it all unfolded in more detail. So let's start with maybe we'll just look at it as your core truth or your core passion, what drives you. What is that in your life?
That is a good question. I think the obvious answer would be part of my core passion is animals. But at the same time, what drives me sometimes is just the drive, being a driven person. Honestly, sometimes I just don't know how to shut it off. Right. I feel like you go around this world one time and you want to do everything, learn everything, see everything, experience everything.
Mm-hmm.
It is an amazing planet and a wonderful life to live. And I just feel like if I'm here for 100 years, it still won't be enough. So if I keep going, I'll get the most out of it that I possibly can.
Okay. I totally love that answer because it is the answer that I would probably give. Of course I'm going to love it. But no, I was just at a training and we were being introduced to different ways that we are in the world. And one of the ways that we can be in the world is it's called the hero. And that's that person, if there's a will, there's a way. And so there's a group of about 35 of us. And there were other kind of categories, and all that. But and people would raise their hand like, I'm an everyday person, or I'm a magician, or I'm, all these. And then it was like, okay, well, who's a hero? And my hand goes straight up.
Good for you.
Like straight up. And then I look around and I am the only person in the room with my hand up. And I'm kind of like,
Change my mind.
I didn't change my mind, but I changed my visibility slightly. No, Wendy, that's what I'm hearing. It's like you're a hero.
Well, I don't feel like I said that. Thank you very much. I think I would be too shy to ever not only say that or raise my hand like you did, but even think that about myself. I won't deny, and I'm very proud of the fact that people have tossed that word around when they learn what I do. And those are people who just understand the passion and the commitment that it takes. Now, look, every man in my family was in the military. I was born on a naval base and I grew up in a military household, but they're the heroes. Clearly, anyone who has ever served is the hero. And in my mind, no doctor, no lawyer, no animal sanctuary executive director can come close to that. So I always hesitate and want people to use that word very sparingly. But thank you for at least thinking that what I do is worthwhile.
Absolutely.
If we can just for a moment stick with that thought right there, Wendy. My daughter and my son-in-law were both in the military. My daughter was lieutenant commander, and my son-in-law was a Marine, and then in the Navy, the National Guard, the Army National Guard. And I know that the family serves. When you've got somebody in Afghanistan or in Iraq or wherever, back to Nam, or wherever it may be, the entire family serves. The entire family pays the price for our country to be safe.
I definitely think we see our country and the world a little bit differently if you do have military in your blood and in your family.
Right. Because I know the watching TV because they can't tell us everything, to see what's happening where they're assigned, to see what's going on. So with that, I bring that up to the point of the families are heroes as well. The families are serving. That it's just our men and women overseas are serving one way, but the families are serving another. So putting that out there, if you've grown up as a hero family, with all of these family members in the military, how natural of you to look at the bigger picture, because we do this for the country. We do this for our people, for our safety. That how natural to me that you take this. Yes, you serve in a very different way.
Well, that's a nice connection to make.
Yeah. Service has been a way of life for you.
You could certainly say that. Yes.
Yeah.
Even practicing law, I was a defense litigation attorney, and not to talk too much about my former career if we're here to talk about my current one, but even then you're serving, and I'm serving at the pleasure of my clients, and I'm trying to do my best for them and work on their behalf. So as much as sometimes I feel like I relate better to animals than I do to people, yes, I have been in the service industry, being a waitress to start out, being a practicing lawyer for a number of decades, and then, doing what I do now.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, so I'm intrigued by going back a bit, because I think
Sure.
that there's a progression of events that brings us to where we're at. And we definitely want to focus on where you're at now and what you're doing now. But could you take us back and maybe if you're willing to talk about what led you to the work that you're doing now? I know there was that pivotal situation and catastrophe and disaster. Are you okay with talking about that and sharing that with us?
Thank you for asking the question if I am or not. When I was nominated and then chosen to give a TEDx talk, and I was specifically nominated based on what we'll be talking about in a moment, I didn't know if I could accept the nomination of giving a presentation, an 18-minute presentation on what I had gone through, knowing that I had lost so much. And can you get up on stage and can you talk to a room full of strangers about what is the most painful moment of your life?
Right.
And I will tell you, when I started even just outlining that presentation for my TEDx talk, I couldn't get through it out loud. And it was just an outline. I couldn't get through it for weeks. And then when that outline had to turn into this 18-minute start to finish speech, I thought to myself, I can read it on the paper and I'm okay. But how in the world am I going to say all of this out loud? And so through practice, and more practice, I don't want to say I will ever be numb to it, but actually giving that TEDx talk helped me further. And we're going back, my house fire where I lost all my pets and all of my belongings was 15 years ago this past February. Yeah. So a lot of time has gone by, but it doesn't mean that as the anniversary approaches every year, I don't get quite choked up. And I find it very hard to go down to the cemetery and spend time there. And I always leave very abruptly and say I'll be back. And then a lot of times I walk past it and I won't bring myself to go back. But giving that TED Talk and getting up on that stage, even after 15 years, finally helped me be able to cope with it better than I think I had before that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, I'm glad you did it for yourself then.
Well, when I was reading it, when I was just reading, on I think your website, I started reading, a little bit more about you because I didn't have the pleasure of meeting you at the TED Talk. I was not there, but I started reading and I got to that part where you're the part of the story that you're going to share with us in a minute, and I literally, I was on my iPad and I literally turned away from my iPad and just kind of had to, and my eyes started watering and tearing up. So I encourage the listeners to listen through because it's a hard story to listen to, but there's some beauty that has come from it. And so that's what I want to hear. And I'm so glad you're willing to share. So go Wendy and take the stage.
Well, okay. This is obviously much easier for me to do when it was scripted out and I already knew what I was going to say. Mm-hmm. And hopefully if any of your listeners are interested in hearing we'll call it scripted story from start to finish, soon those TED Talks from that day will be available online. And I do hope people will go and look for it so they can hear the story as I let it unfold during that presentation. But if your question is taking you back to what got me to make the change, that's an obvious answer. It was the house fire, and I didn't make any kind of change right away. When you go through a fire and you lose your home and you lose your belongings and you lose your pets, and hopefully no one has ever lost more than that they haven't lost people. But when you do that, your life stops and goes from 100 to 0, and it stays there, and everything around you just disappears, and you're in this weird, unique group of people that have been through the same thing, but you don't know where they are and you don't know who to reach out to, and you are very, very alone. And you have to, it's like when, and I laugh, and I don't mean to laugh, but sometimes when my friends became new parents, they would always say, well, no one ever taught me, no one ever told me that this is how my toddler was going to act. Right. And I think there are 1,000 parenting books out there. How did you not read one? But that's exactly how I felt, is no one ever told me what to do if I lost everything. Right. Where do you turn to? What do you do? And right. you think you can turn to your insurance company, and frankly, your insurance company is there to fight you and to tell you all the things that they're not going to do for you, because they need to maximize their profits, or at least that was the case in my case. And thankfully, I was a lawyer at the time, and I was able to fight my own battle with them and get through that, so that I could stop focusing on the litigation aspect or the negotiation aspect, and I could start rebuilding my life from scratch. At the same time, I was the managing partner of a law firm. That doesn't stop. Right. That doesn't stop. And that added obviously a lot of pressure to things. You know, my employees and my partner, they were business as usual. And frankly, they expected me to be as well. And I had to rise to that challenge. That was a challenge I did not want to take on. You want to crawl into a ball and you just want to disappear for a while. And the clock doesn't stop ticking. Time keeps on moving, and you have to deal with it. So I did. I was still in that mode of, let's fix it. This is what I do. Yes, I lost everything, but let's look forward and just get back to where I need to be. And then when I got back to where I thought that place was, my house was rebuilt. I had more pets that I adopted. I bought new clothes and all the other things I lost. And I was still running my firm. And it wasn't long after that where you realize, oh, I fought so hard to get back to this point. And now that I think about it, it's not really where I feel like I need to be. Wow. And as I was saying to Dottie before we started our talk today, I didn't leave my law practice because I was unhappy. I just left it because I thought something was missing. And if there's something missing and you want to live a happy life, go figure out what's missing and take it on. Take on the challenge. I'm not saying that it was an easy decision. It was not. It was sitting down with my husband and seeing if this was even something we could do. We were going from me being the breadwinner in the family to us having one income. It was a major life shift for me to go from practicing law and having a very successful career to leaving that behind to start an animal sanctuary. And I should say grow an animal sanctuary, because I had started it just as a little grassroots need to give back. This is my way of trying to make a little bit of a difference. And I, at least in the beginning, thought I could do both, and I did do both. And as Dottie probably remembers me saying at one point, if you build it, they will come. And once word got out that there was an organization like West Place Animal Sanctuary that did what we do, people start calling, people start needing you. The ASPCA ultimately finds you when a very massive animal cruelty case shows up in our area. Wow. And they reach out to organizations like mine when farm animals are involved, because they needed the extra assistance. You know, they are very good at what they do, and they're very good at focusing on puppy mills and cockfighting rings and rescues from hurricanes and situations like that. But it's not often that they are confronted with 1,400 farm animals. So they realized they needed all the resources they could possibly get. Right. And they found us. And I had already moved my law practice home at that point. Again, I didn't want to give up either opportunity. I was thinking I could still do both. And once they called a few years ago, I realized that's it. I've tried very hard not to be on the map with the animal sanctuary, to manage our numbers and to manage our finances. That put us on the map, no doubt. And from there on, that was it. I went inactive as an attorney and officially shut down what was left of my practice. The clients that I had wrapped up their cases or gave them to other very reliable attorneys, and realized it was time for me to put 100% of my focus on the animal sanctuary.
Wow. I
just imagine step by step we go to where we need to go.
Right.
That's
and I haven't even put a dent in it. There's so much more that needs to be done, and there are so many more miles that I need to travel in this venture.
Yeah. I think one of the things that you said that has been so important for me, and I think I can speak for Dottie too, is that we have so many opportunities often in life, and we have to let go of some of the yeses in our lives. Being a lawyer for you, it was a yes for you. It was something that is financially fulfilling. It was a challenge for you. You loved it. You were good at it. It just provided in so many levels, but there was something, you said there was something missing. Yeah. So the thing that was missing was what?
As much as I enjoyed practicing, and as much as I loved my clients and respected them and always tried to do 100% my best job, the law was not as fulfilling as really making a difference. In respect to that. And with animals, and I think Dottie said it at the beginning of this when she was reading my bio, and it is my quote, so I was going to say I couldn't have said it better myself, but I did say it. Practicing law and representing clients was a good goal, but representing those that can't actually speak for themselves was the right goal.
I love that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, I'm thinking one is kind of working with human nature, and the other, and man-made nature in a sense, and the other is really shifting to Mother Nature.
And animals are pure. What they do is never malicious. It's never on purpose. They don't have any mean intent. They're animals. They're living their truth. We're talking today about how we live ours as a human. And the best thing you can do, look to an animal. Learn from that animal. They live their truth every moment of every day without consequence, or at least it should be without consequence. And unfortunately, sometimes when humankind, bad humankind, get involved, bad things can happen to those animals, and they did nothing to deserve that kind of treatment.
Exactly.
We're there to try to fix those human mistakes.
And what I see is that your clients there's always folks that will want more clients that will help and support them with the law. The pure innocence and goodness of the animals needs somebody who's willing to stand up and say, this pure innocent creature does not deserve anything but the unconditional love they give others to come back at them.
That is very true. And I tell you, I cannot do it by myself at this point. We are very fortunate that although we have managed to operate on a small budget, as many nonprofits will tell you, it's very, very difficult to raise money for these causes, and everyone's always fighting for the same finances. But I'm very fortunate in that we have a volunteer base that is so reliable and responsible and loving and hardworking. We have probably 36 animal care volunteers throughout the course of a week.
Yeah.
And we do a lot of other things here as well. For example, we grow food for the animals.
I saw that.
Yeah, and it's fun, and it's for people who maybe would like to be around the animals, but either don't have the physical capability to work around them, or maybe are even a little bit nervous to work around them, which is completely understandable. That way, these people can come and they can work in our greenhouses and our fields, and we actually have what we call a wildlife berry garden, because we do wildlife rehabilitation as well.
Oh, wow. Cool.
We do orphaned baby wildlife in the spring and summer. And that was actually how I started. So although the majority of our year-round focus is now on farm animals from cruelty, neglect, and abuse cases, this all started because I started taking in baby birds as a wildlife rehabilitator.
Yeah.
So that was where I came from. That was that was the start of this. I can't really leave that behind either. There's a soft spot in my heart for all these fuzzy little babies that show up each spring. And of course, our volunteers love seeing them as well. So we do a lot of other things like the greenhouse and the berry garden. So we have so many volunteers over and above just our animal care volunteers. And those people come, many of them tell me that they live about an hour away.
Wow.
And when I tell them, I can't take you on because I wouldn't want to commit to this if I were you. And they say, you don't understand. It's so hard to find an organization that does what you do.
Exactly.
Please, I promise you I will drive the hour. And they do. I've had people with us for years that have been driving that hour.
Yeah.
And they love it. And when they aren't here, they want to know how the animals are doing. We actually have our own private little photo sharing app that we use so that all the volunteers can upload pictures of the animals doing cute things, because everyone who's not here until their next shift, they don't want to feel left out. Right. I couldn't do it if those people didn't feel that way. Yeah. If they weren't willing, if they didn't fall in love, and they weren't willing to give of themselves as selflessly as they do week after week, the West Place Animal Sanctuary wouldn't exist.
Yeah.
Well, think of how when you know it yourselves, I know it with my little ones, they feed us. When you work with these exquisite creatures, you get fed.
They do.
In a way you don't get fed anyplace else. So driving an hour to be fed in that way. When you drive a half an hour to go to a good restaurant where you're hoping the meal is going to be great, but now you know how you're going to be fed by driving that hour. It's so worth it.
Well, it's so cool. They can listen to this podcast too on one of those drives now. They're like, Wendy, she's on a podcast. I want to make sure that I ask you for the story about your goat, because I love that story where this little goat was not getting the right diagnosis and it was just struggling, and you were tenacious and stuck with it. And this sweet, sweet goat was able to stand on its own legs. And I mean, you don't have to tell like the whole story, but that little part of what happened medically I know. I'm like,
so that one may bring me right to the edge. I've done so many farm animals now that I try very hard to take things in stride. It doesn't mean we all don't bawl our eyes out when one of them passes away and leaves us, but he was one of my first. So before West Place Animal Sanctuary came into existence, I had a pet goat. And I didn't have farm animals my whole life. This was my first farm animal. And something went wrong with him. He lost the ability to walk. And we couldn't figure out why. And I went from vet to vet to vet. And they all thought they knew what was going on. One of them scared me to death because she diagnosed him with CAE. If I have it right, it's caprine arthritic encephalitis. It is very contagious, very debilitating, and will eventually lead to death. And she left having made that diagnosis. And one day, without an appointment, she showed up to euthanize him. And I'm glad that I caught her, and I'm glad that I was there.
Wow.
And I said, I don't think that this is the correct diagnosis. Now, granted, I'm not a doctor, and I do make a joke that I was a medical malpractice attorney for 20 years. So it's like, I'm not a doctor, but I play one on TV.
Right. I totally get it.
I learned in those 20 years of talking with experts and reading medical journals and trying to learn everything about everything so you could best defend your doctor client. I learned just enough to be dangerous. And I thought I knew better, and I wanted to get yet another diagnosis. So I finally took him to Tufts Animal Hospital, which Dottie probably knows is not too far away. And they correctly diagnosed him. He had developed an abscess, a septic abscess on his C1, C2 vertebrae. That's what took away his ability to walk. It was pressing on his nerves, on his spinal column. So they told me that there was a very high risk surgery that they don't often perform, but they could. And I said yes, because as you mentioned, I say yes and I don't know how to say no. And I said yes, and he was there for a long time. He made it through the surgery and recuperated there. And they told me it was time that I could start thinking about taking him home. And to me, that was the greatest decision I could make, was to bring him home. And of course, little did I know that 2 weeks later, my house would catch on fire and he was actually in it. And that was after spending a large amount of money and going through a lot of nerves and physical therapy and rehabilitation and all of that. And had I left him in the hospital, he would have survived. And they were actually going to do a medical paper on him, because when he did get the ability to walk back, and I filmed it and I sent it to them, they couldn't guarantee me that he would regain that ability. And when he did, it was monumental. It was beautiful. It was amazing. It was in fact a miracle. And to see him so happy and in charge of his own faculties again was one of the best days. And unfortunately, I lost him a short period later.
Yeah. Well, I think that just, again, it's so sad, such a sad story. The loss is profound, but the giving, the depth of giving and tenacity that you have, I mean, now it plays out in the work you're doing today, and the people, the volunteers, and the dozens of volunteers that work for you, they're not working necessarily for you, but for the organization. They do it because your leadership, it's positive, and it's so, we can do this. We can make a difference. And that's why I said hero. I won't say it again, but I really do. I see that if there's a will, there's a way. Just do it. That Nike kind of thing. And I see that in you, and it's beautiful. So what's happening today? You have all the volunteers, and bring us up to date and where you want to grow the business, the nonprofit.
When we first started, I didn't want to grow. I thought when its grassroots organization and I was still practicing law, I thought that was big enough. And then I was told by the public, by their phone calls, by the ASPCA calling, by all of the need that was out there that was coming into us, I realized it wasn't big enough. And now we've gotten to the point where we are today with all of our volunteers, and we are filled to capacity. Other than wildlife, for large farm animals right now, we're pretty much, I hate to say it, but one out, one in. So if one leaves us, we have room for another. But we did many cases quickly and got filled up, and we love it. I wouldn't change it. But where we are now is, although I didn't want to get bigger from here, we're now talking about expanding. How do we come up with the funding to find a second location? We've filled the 8 acres that we're on. So how do we come up with the funding we need to get another 8 acres or 15 acres? And and I know that my volunteers will follow me anywhere, and I know they're already ready for it. I know they wish it would just happen overnight and I could snap my fingers and we'd be there. Unfortunately, my job isn't the fun job. It's not being out there every day playing with the animals. When it's always lonely at the top, and it is really lonely being the executive director, and I'm trying to grant write and fundraise and raise our donor base and get awareness out there so that we can be better funded, because we do have so much work to do, and I don't like saying no. And our filled to capacity makes us have to say no at times. We don't want that. There's a need in this area, and we want to be able to fill it whenever we can. So we've got some growing pains at the moment, and we are talking about where to find a secondary location, how to bring on a full-time staff member from, we just have a few very, very part-time people, trying to keep our costs down. But we need to bring on full-time staff, and we need to become, I don't want to say we need to grow up, but we need to become serious, because we are obviously very serious, but we can't be kids at this anymore. We need to start playing the big leagues. We need to get there in order to have the best impact. We've reached the pinnacle of what we can do with what we have right now.
This is Dr. Dorothy Morton Neville. As a psychotherapist for over 25 years, the founder of 4 companies, an international speaker, and an executive coach, I'm well aware of how absolutely isolating it can be to be a successful career woman. As a result, I've created a virtual membership program for women leaders who are equally isolated and need that place to get confidential feedback, to brainstorm, gain insight, share experiences, and so much more. Join me, become a member of my community. I'd love to see you there. Check out the details on my website, askdrdorothy.com, or email me at dorothy@askdrdorothy.com. I'd love to tell you all about it and have you become a member of the community.
Well, hello, everyone. This is Diane. We're taking a little break from the podcast. Just wanted to remind you that I have created a mobile application called Dare You. And if you haven't already downloaded it onto your phone, please go to iTunes and download it, and you will get a dare and a quote on a daily basis that is guaranteed, quote unquote, to increase your emotional intelligence one dare at a time. All right. And you want to increase your emotional intelligence. Why? Because it makes everything better in your life. And if you don't have an iTunes account, that's cool, because what you can do is go to my website, Simply Schrocking. That's my last name with ING, simplyschrocking.com. Sign up there and we'll get your dares and your quotes sent to you in your email. All right. Back to the podcast. So when you say one in, one out, or one out, one in, how do they get adopted out, or what's that process like?
So being a sanctuary, that is not our primary goal. Being a sanctuary, we know we've taken in the worst of the worst animals, and we know what their medical needs are. Right. We know what to look for. We know how to do a check on each one of them every day. We have adopted out in the past, and sometimes it's worked, and sometimes they come back to us, and it's no fault of the animal. It's always the fault of the adopter. And as much research we do, or getting background information and making sure we'll do property checks to make sure that they're going to the right place. And in spite of everything and again, being a lawyer, I know how to dot my I's and cross my T's.
I bet.
I'm not going into this deer in the headlights. I just have a wish to start an animal sanctuary. I am approaching this as a businesswoman. And even though we're a nonprofit, I need to make sure it's a sustainable nonprofit. So if someone is getting adopted out and leaving us, I need to make sure that they're not coming back. Yes. And when they do, we realize that it's hard to become an owner of a farm animal if it's not what you do and you want them as pets. If you're a farmer, that's different. That's a completely different situation.
Sure.
But we get these animals in from cruelty and neglect cases. We don't want to send them into another potential neglect case.
Right.
Not when they've already been through so much. So, where we stand now, that's how we end up with our filled to capacity, one out, one in.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, I was just wondering, where do they come from and where do they go and how that process works. So you get information from agencies saying, we've got a problem here, we've got a situation here, we need your help. And then,
yes.
Okay. And then they bring the animals to you, or do you go out and get them, or how does that work?
Well, with the case that I mentioned a little while ago, the very large 1,400 animal case that happened in Massachusetts a couple of years back,
right?
That case went on for 5 months. So what happens is an organization like the ASPCA gets called in. They come to town, they assess the situation, they bring in an organization or a dozen organizations like West Place Animal Sanctuary to help out. And once they assess, their policy is to get those animals off that property as quickly as they can and put them in a temporary facility. And when it comes to farm animals, it's to find temporary farmland with tents and fencing and all of that they bring and they put up. They then have to they go through a lot. I think any organization, I'm not limiting it just to the ASPCA. I think any organization that does this on a large scale goes through the same thing. You've got to assess the animals. They all need a medical check. They all need medical certificates. Any male that's not neutered will get neutered. And then you've got to make sure if any of the animals were pregnant, you're going to keep those animals through their gestation. You've got a lot of sick animals that need to be treated. You've got vets that will need to run lab testing for diseases. Certain diseases that go through farm animals can be very debilitating to many different species. And that all takes time. So we actually worked alongside the ASPCA for 5 months. That was a 5-month long case before the last animal was either moved on to a different sanctuary or adopted out or what have you. And I always like to tell the story that we actually have what I call the sickest animal from that case that lived. He ended up at Tufts Animal Hospital for 8.5 weeks. He probably cost the ASPCA $10,000. I can't speak to it because I don't work there, but that's having had a farm animal go through that. That's my best guess.
Right.
And they were actually ready to move out. They were done. All the animals had been sent to where they were going to either live or be adopted out further from those locations. And they called and they said, Wendy, we're as you know, we're wrapping up. We're getting ready to go. We still have an animal at the hospital. We don't know if he's going to live or not, but if he does, will you take responsibility for him? And he was so sick, he got everybody's heart there. And the vet who actually works for the ASPCA, she chose his name because she was always dealing with him and always treating him, and she felt like she needed to call him something. So she thought he looked like a Carl with a K. So we have a sheep named Carl, and he's amazing. And he survived that whole ordeal, no matter how many infections his little body battled, and his lack of nutrition, and he was malnourished, and he was dehydrated, and he went through a couple different infections that ran through his body, and he made it. And he's one of the biggest fighters I've ever met, human or animal.
Yes.
Look at that. And then your heart goes out to those, when you see those that fight so hard to stay alive, your heart goes out to them. And it's almost if I can infuse my energy within them, if I can infuse my strength within them to help them to help them make.
And now, now that he's healthy, I'd say the opposite. I wish I could get some of his energy. I wish I could just take that from him.
Right. I'm going to make up a phrase and say, I need more Carl right now.
I love it.
I need to pull Carl right now. It's like have a little pack. Carl, on my wall, because honestly, Wendy, you pulled a Carl over and over and over again. And
I'm going to send you a picture of him.
I want to see a picture of Carl. I'm a big, I'm a big animal person. Like I have a dog, and I love it when Dottie's cat goes through every single video. Everything, because they're drawn to our podcast. Where's your cat? what's the cat?
Well, I just went out. I just was checking.
Is that what you did?
I heard something and went to check and make sure my baby's okay.
Yeah.
But just hearing you speak, it just brings up that unconditional love we have for our little ones, that unconditional love and hope for these exquisite creatures. That what can we do to help make their life more pleasurable, and how much love can we give them to heal them when they're wounded, when they're sick? It makes us, I believe, a better us.
Yeah.
I couldn't have said that better. I think it does, and I'm glad that I did follow the path that I did. It almost didn't happen, and I will say it was because of what I'm going to call peer pressure. And I would be sitting in a deposition or at a meeting and at my law firm or at someone else's firm, and the other lawyers, my colleagues, my contemporaries, they heard through the grapevine or saw what I had started to do. And that wasn't normal to them. Talking about golfing or race car driving or what scotch they like to drink was normal for them. Talking about animals, I would always get the eye roll or the giggle or the smirk or the snarky comment. And it hurt my feelings because they could sit around the table and talk about how great their kids were, but I couldn't sit around the table and talk about how great the animals were. And that was always hurtful and a little, I felt disrespected. I wouldn't ever say that to them, to each his own, but I always felt that they looked at me at a minimum differently, if not like a lesser person, because I wasn't talking about kids or what scotch was my favorite scotch to drink. And they always thought I was crazy. And there was no doubt. My partner felt the same way. My employees, I employed them. They would never say that to my face, but they probably did as well. And so leaving to finally choose that path was difficult. Lawyers do have an ego, and I like to think that mine was probably the smallest out of all of the lawyers that I know, but you still have one. You worked very hard to put yourself through law school and, to pass multiple bars. And then not only you start out as an associate, and then you end up running a law firm and becoming the managing partner. And no doubt that's not an easy feat. And I was very proud of what I accomplished, and walking away was very hard. And I was afraid that in doing so, I would fall into oblivion. I would become unimportant, and I just wouldn't matter anymore. And to my benefit and to my surprise, honestly speaking, and I don't think I've ever said something so honest, I matter more. I feel like I matter more now than I did when I practiced.
Yeah.
Well, it's a difference between a human doing and doing and doing and doing, and a human being. And when you're a human being on the path that is fulfilling and you get to open your heart up more and more, what's better? Like, I can't think of a thing, not a thing. I do wonder, and I know this is kind of going back a little bit, but Wendy, did you ever meet any of these people that were abusing animals? I mean, what happened to them?
I don't know. I don't know them. I've never met them. I do know that the particular case I used throughout this podcast as an example, did ultimately go to trial. It went into litigation, and as far as I know, it may actually still be in litigation right now. Okay. It's been a very long, ongoing, arduous process. So hopefully justice will be done, whatever that justice may be. I'm not a part of that case as much as I would have been interested in bringing out my legal skills at that time. That wasn't what I was meant to do.
Sure.
What I was meant to do was just be on this end of it and give those animals sanctuary.
Yeah. What I really see, maybe because of the work that I'm doing, is that, we're working in leadership, specifically women in leadership, but I work with men as well, that truly effective leadership is heart-based. It's soul-based. And you've gone from a leadership which was really head-based, knowing the law, knowing how to work with it, how to work around it, whatever the case may be, to support your client. And now here we are, your heart expanding, connecting to your soul's calling, really leading the way I think the new leadership is moving. The Leadership Redefined is my next book. And I really think that is really redefining what does it mean to be a leader.
It's very interesting.
When you follow your purpose and you come from your heart and your soul, it doesn't for a moment mean you can't be a business. It doesn't matter if you're a nonprofit. I've been on so many boards of national and local organizations. If a nonprofit isn't run like a business, it doesn't remain a nonprofit. You have got to run it like a business, and which means you've got to have your head on straight. You've got to know what you're doing. You've got to bring in all the supports, all the lawyers, all the accountants, all the whatevers you need to make it work for you. And so it really is owning that leadership. But the new leadership, as I see it, as I said, is truly heart-based and soul-based, so that you're following your purpose. And when you work for a company, you happen to have formed your own company, but when you're working for a company whose values are in alignment with yours, you and the company win, and the money comes in because the employee and the company are in alignment with the purpose. And I see you here as you're in alignment with this, and now you're talking about getting bigger and expanding, and if not doubling or tripling your size, as you go. And I don't mean by tomorrow, no, we'll put that pressure on your shoulders, but as you continue to grow and become that ability to own the leadership of a company, but also one that's driven by heart and soul. Yeah. And really in the pure innocence of these creatures you're working with, the people you bring in, that really becomes, even with the volunteers, you choosing the volunteers who come from their heart and their soul. And yes, they're there to be fed, but they're also there to feed. And if all they're doing is taking, they don't belong in the organization. So it really, as the head of a company, you begin to look at your volunteers even with different eyes. Because as you become more and more of who you are, by following your passion, by following your purpose, you bring that much more into not just the world, but into this business. It's just an amazing thing that just really brings out immense admiration that you're doing this in a way that really is transforming what leadership looks like. And how much easier it is to start by doing that with little ones that you can love so completely. Now it's just supporting you as a businesswoman and how you make that happen, how you double the size of your organization, because that means more animals, more people, more volunteers. And as you said, getting some paid staff on board. And maybe one of those would be a grant writer who wanted to donate, because I've been involved with grants in the past. And when you have a good grant writer, they know the language, they know the presentation, they know how to make things happen the way the rest of us fumble through, They would
be my new best friend. Yes.
Yes. Well, we're getting close to wrapping up here, but I wanted to ask you a couple questions, and it really relates to what we're here and wanting to do. Dottie and I are very focused on telling the truth, getting the truth out about people like you, our truth, what we're doing, with our lives that are making, we hope, a difference. And there's this daring part that we tagged on there. And this is the part that everybody was like, oh, what are they going to ask? And simply, where in your life, personal or in your business life, is there one area where you know you need to step through that door or step off the cliff, as Dottie says, where you need to dare yourself to take that next step? Is there one that you could share with us?
Well, you told me I nailed my first question, so I don't to get this one right. Tell me if when I answer, I haven't gone down the right path with this, but it may sound silly. I think that what I need to dare myself to do at this point is actually step back a little bit, take a little bit of time, and actually look back at me and myself. Yeah. And I know in my mind, again, type A personality, I'm just plowing through, doing what I need to do to make this nonprofit work. Right. But many of the volunteers, and my husband included, has said to me, you need to make time to do the things that make you happy besides this, personal things that make you happy. Yeah. So I know I want to take guitar lessons. I've always wanted to take guitar lessons. I learned French in school, and I want to go to Provence. And I've been to Paris, but I want to go to Provence, and I need to brush up on my French, and that takes time. I wrote a book, and I gave it to an editor who loved it and edited it for me. And it is in final draft, and it is sitting on my shelf because I have not reached out to publishers or agents to get that book out there and get it on the shelf. And I would love to be a published author. I put years of work into that book, and wow. I would love to be able to share that without just, I don't want to say just, but without just dropping it on Amazon. I want that. That's my own recognition. If I do that, I want to be recognized for the content of that book. I want someone to want it, and I need to find the time to try to get it out there. So that's a multiple part answer, I guess. If you let me keep talking, I'll think of all the other things that
you have come up with a dare list. Like, it's the dare list of dare lists.
Is your book about your work here now with the animals?
It actually isn't. The animal sanctuary, I like to say, it does play a role in the book. It is a character in the book, but no, it's a much more serious topic. It's about dealing with someone dealing with alcoholism and addiction.
Okay.
Wow.
So it really takes you out of this world and puts you in another world. Thank God the book is edited, because that energy brings out something dramatically different in you than just the babies. Yeah. That's a whole. Look at how multifaceted. Look. Yeah.
So there will be another podcast. I hope you will be invited.
I would love that.
Get that book.
Yeah.
We'll talk about the book, because there's, addiction and this, feeling alone and isolated and not feeling like we have options. And, these are human feelings that lead down very dark paths for some people. So that would be, we'd love to have you back. Okay. Final question. You're welcome.
Final question. Yeah.
The final question is, what is it? Okay. So
look at the stress in your shoulders.
I get so caught up in all the emotion of it. Okay. So you have done some amazing, amazing things in your life, and you've touched a lot of people, but all of that is gone now. Just imagine erased, gone. No one knows who you are. No one knows what you've done. But you do have this one opportunity. You get to stand before the world, and they are going to listen, which is rare in itself. They're going to listen to what you share with them. And it'll be like a sentence or two, but it will be golden, and it will be wise. And the really, really cool part is they're going to go out and they're going to do what you say. What would you share with the world? What are those words?
first I would share that I wish I had more time to think about this answer. Having it sprung on me, I think I would say that I was described once in one word, and that word was determination. And since the day I was described by that word, I've lived by that word. And I was honored that that was how I was looked at and I was perceived. It could have been a lot of things. It could have been beautiful or talented. It wasn't. It was determination. And I would tell everyone that if those that know them best can describe them in one word, live by that word, and you'll never make a mistake. Everything you do will be the right thing.
Well,
they'd be living in their truth, wouldn't they?
Yeah, if all of your beautiful rescue animals had a human voice, they could speak English because they do have a voice, but had the English language, they would be saying, "Mommy Wendy, you are my hero." I lied. I said it again. You are my hero.
Yeah.
Thank you for being determined enough to save or prolong the lives of all of these beautiful souls, these animal souls.
Yeah. These beautiful
it was about time we got, an animal lover on. We all love animals, but I was excited to meet you because we haven't had someone with the determination that you have to take care of those who cannot
take care of themselves.
Yeah.
In a world where they're not always seen as being so valued.
And I appreciate you both giving me this platform to be able to talk about it with a bigger audience than just our little local group of volunteers. I appreciate that. That means the world. And it was fun hanging out with you ladies today.
So
I feel like I made 2 new friends.
You did.
I wanted to say you did. And that TED Talk, when it comes out, if you could just forward the link to us and we can put it on our site so people can watch it, because I want people to see and hear your story. So please forward that. And one last thing, I got to have a picture of Carl. That's all I'm saying.
Send you a picture of Carl and you will fall in love.
I know. I'm already in love with Carl.
Thank you so very, very much, Wendy.
Thanks for joining us today. We're thrilled to have you here with us, and we're looking forward to reconnecting with you in our next podcast at Truth and Double Daring with Dottie and Diane.